When you look at the drawing for C, it's pretty clear to tell how we're going to start. We're going to start with our customary rectangle, and we're going to make it with the distance 8 and 5. So I'm going to go ahead and go into AutoCAD, REC, I'm going to do 1, 1 at 8, 5. Once I had that done, I typically, whenever I've drawn rectangles in the past, I always explode and then offset. However, I want to create another rectangle and then an additional rectangle, and it just is going to be really where I can offset these rectangles in a distance of 1/4 and a distance of 1/8. So if I go back, I can do O enter, and then do a distance of 1/4, and if I select my rectangle, it's going to offset the entire rectangle. That makes life a lot easier than having to offset each individual line. Now I can do O enter again and do 1/8. Once I do that 1/8, I'm then going to have to go ahead and start exploding. So if I look at my drawing, it's kind of getting there where we've got a little bit of it done. At this point now I want to figure out is how far to go over from this far side to get where really the left side of my arrow is created. So I can offset a distance of 1. And then I can offset a distance of 6. Now that's pretty easy, you guys will be able to figure that out without any issues. The only part that I'm a little bit concerned of some of you figuring out is how to get the height of 1 for the middle part of the arrow. It doesn't tell you how far to go from the bottom or the top of the drawing, but I can go ahead and assume that if I draw a line down the dead center of this rectangle, and I can offset up a distance of 1/2 and offset down a distance of 1/2, and I would be able to get then this thickness. So let's go ahead and do these few steps. I'm going to offset 1 from this side. Now, you can see if I'm about to select the entire rectangle, all of it would be offset in. So I do need to go ahead and explode. So I'm going to select this line and do O enter, and now I can offset a single line. Now I can offset a distance of 6 and go ahead and create now this far side of my arrow. Now I'm going to draw a line down the middle of my rectangle, and then I can offset up a distance of 1/2. Once I have this done, I still have to create my angle. Now this is where it gets kind of a little bit tricky for some students because of the various angles that we're going to be creating. A lot of students will just type in 60 and 60 and think that they are good and really not think about how AutoCAD is taking that 60 degrees. Yes, if I measured this with a protractor, it would be an angle of 60, but how we're actually going to draw that in AutoCAD is a different story. Note really quickly that this distance is going to be 2 1/4, so we will have to go ahead and input that and then determine the angle in order to create part of the arrow. So I'm going to go ahead and select L enter, and from this point, which would be the very tip of my arrow, I know that I want to do a distance of 2 1/4. So I can go ahead and type that in. Now, if I hit enter, it's going to go and create this distance, yes, but the angle will be wrong, so I gotta hit tab. So what is my angle gonna be? If I typed in 60, here's where it would be. It'd be right around here. Obviously not correct. So if you look, if I start from 0 and go all the way around, that's gonna be 180. Now I have to figure out from 180, what do I have to add on to that? Or really subtract from it? So if I know that this entire area is 60, then from the middle I would have to go down 30 degrees. So here would be 180, you can see. So if I have to go down 30, I would do tab 150. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, you may want to come and kind of talk to me and I'll explain it a little bit more in detail for you. I hit enter. Now I can do really something very similar up here. The distance is going to be 2 1/4, and I can hit tab. And now same thing. So here is 180, and you can see if I move this up, which is the direction I want it to go, that I'm going to have to move it up 30 degrees. So I can type in 150, and that would be the actual angle inside of AutoCAD I've got to create. I hit enter, and then now what I have to do is draw my angles going back. Okay, the distance doesn't really matter because all we're really caring about is that this angle is going to at least go past this line so I can then trim it and it connects to it. I do have to draw this line at a 60-degree angle, so I've got to figure out what that angle is going to mean in AutoCAD. So if I pull this back, and you can kind of see if I hover, and I always try to do this and make sure that my angles are right. If I hover and kind of shift my cursor a little bit and I go to 60 degrees, this actually does look correct. I can also figure this out because this would be 90, and for it to go back at a 60-degree angle would be, in fact, what I need to type in and what I want it to do in AutoCAD. So I'm going to do tab 60. Again, the distance doesn't matter as long as I go past this line. Now I can go ahead and do the same thing here. So I'm just going to do tab 60 and then hit escape. If you're ever creating a drawing and can't figure out what to do as far as angles go, I would suggest just typing angles in or moving your cursor and seeing, okay, this looks almost right. What angle am I at? Does it make sense that it would be, like for this line when we did angle of 150, does it make sense if I'm at 180 here, but I want to go down 30 degrees to get 150? So again, you can kind of just keep in mind that it's okay to play around and move your cursor and kind of figure out where angles should be. That's never a bad thing to do. Plus, you can always undo everything you do in AutoCAD. Now we have to do a lot of trimming, so that's going to be my next step. When I am trimming, I'm going to kind of show you guys what I would consider as a shortcut, because there would be, again, a lot of trimming to do for this drawing. So if I just do TR enter enter and I select here and here, now what I can do, and I can do the same thing here and here, instead of having to trim here and here and here and clicking all these places, I can just really trim once, and then I can select the lines because I don't want to have to keep trimming, and just delete them. And that goes a lot faster versus if I trimmed each individual piece. I can trim here, here. So I'm really just going to trim a couple places, and then everything else I can delete, and it's going to make life go, again, a lot faster versus trimming everything. And let's say you were trying to trim and there was really nothing else to trim to. You can always select the lines like I just did and delete, and that will work as well. So now that I have this drawing done, the next few things I'm going to show you guys is all about dimensioning. So I'm going to change my layer from object to dimension, go to the annotate tab, and we're going to add some angular dimensions. Now the first one I'm going to add is going to be on the inside of my angle. If I pulled it out, like I always tell you guys to pull out dimensions, if I pulled it out, it would look like this, which hopefully you could look at and agree would be ridiculous. So we do actually want to pull and leave this dimension inside. The distance, because of it being inside view, doesn't matter. I would try to just place it towards the center of this angle. Now we do have to add another dimension, and it's going to be this dimension right here. Again, we don't want to pull this out. It would look kind of crazy to do so. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my snap so I can pull this out. So it's going to be 3/8 of an inch though. And then I have one more dimension that I'm going to allow you guys to leave inside. Every other dimension is going to be pulled outside the drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and do a line dimension. And this is going to be a little bit different. Instead of it being linear, where if I dimensioned this, I'd be pulling it straight down or pulling it straight out, I'm actually going to make it so it aligns with my drawing. So I'm going to go down to 3/8 of an inch, and I now have this dimension where it's aligning with this line, the angle that we have for this line, at 2 1/4. We still have several more dimensions to add, and I do want to make it very clear that no other dimension should be inside of the drawing. Everything else will need to be outside. I do want to give a few pointers though. If I am dimensioning this distance right here, it's going to be very, very small because it is going to be this 1/4. So I'm still going to pull up and do my typical 3/8 spacing, and then I can drag my dimension inside. I still have to worry about now adding a really, really small dimension, this 1/8 next to it. There's really not going to be enough room, and now you have the arrow going through it. So I'm actually going to undo and get rid of that and see if I can add the dimension over here. So I'm going to select, and I'm going to pull up. If for whatever reason it doesn't allow you to pull up, if you just hit escape and try selecting different points, just like I selected 2 different lines in a different order, it'll typically work fine for you. And now this 1/8, yes, I know maybe not be ideal with where we have it since it's not right next to the 1/4, but it will be okay if you space these apart and if you don't include every single dimension. So what I mean by that is I don't need the 1/8 here and the 1/4 here. There's really not going to be enough room to do that. I will tell you we'll have to make sure that the 1/8 is on this side. Otherwise, when you add your overall, that 1/8 would actually be going outside. I know the spacing's not right. I'm just kind of adding the dimensions so you guys can see. You will have to add additional dimensions for this portion of the drawing not just for the rectangles. And I will highly recommend that you add or use 3-dimension lines. If you have to do that, please make sure that you go from the object and you go 3 snaps, and then from the first dimension line to the second dimension line 2 snaps, and then from the second to the third should be 2 snaps, because that distance is always going to be 1/4. You have to do really some of the same dimensions, the 1/8 and the 1/4, on this side of the drawing as well. Again, you have to be very, very smart with where you put your dimensions. Maybe this side would be the better side. Just kind of think about how that's going to look, how things are going to be pulling through the drawing, and make sure that you do include all necessary dimensions.